world into your life and brings gifts that will never fade. So raise your hand if you currently have or very soon will have a Christmas tree in your home. Yeah, most everyone has raised their hands. You know, for most of us, indeed for most Americans, Christmas trees are an essential part of our Christmas celebrations. So I have a few facts for you about Christmas trees. In the United States alone, about $5 billion is spent on Christmas trees. $5 billion on real or fake Christmas trees every year. We buy about 56 million Christmas trees every year, and on average, a family is going to spend about $80 on a tree. Here in the United States, the majority of Christmas trees are grown in just 5 states. Just 5. Now, if you have a real Christmas tree in your home that's between 6 and 7 feet tall, well, it can take up to 15 years. 15 years for that tree to grow to that height. And not only do we spend a lot of money on Christmas trees, but we also worry quite a bit about how those trees are going to be decorated. You know, most people are really very passionate about how they decorate their Christmas tree. Just tell me if this isn't true for you. There's the way that you decorate your Christmas tree in your house, and then there's the way that everybody else decorates their tree. You know? So who's wrong? There are some people who say only white lights on my tree. There are others who say only multicolored lights on my tree. Some people say I will never, ever, ever have a fake tree in my house. And other people will say that a fake tree is the best thing that ever happened. When do you put up your tree? Some say that it has to happen the day after Thanksgiving. Others wait sometimes as long as Christmas Eve to put up and decorate their tree. And then there are those who've had their tree up for so long that they're trying to figure out how to dust the thing. Then what do you put on top of your tree? That's an age-old question. What's your tree topper? Is it an angel? That's biblical. But so is a star. Which is better? Now, if you don't care about those two things, you can really go crazy with what you're going to put on top of your tree. Just search Amazon for tree toppers. You can get a Santa topper, or if you're a sci-fi fan, you can go with Doctor Who. If you're a Star Wars geek, you can put Yoda or Luke Skywalker on the top of your tree. Or if you're a fan of 1950s rock and roll, you can put Elvis on the top of your tree. But you have to see that's the wrong king to put on the top of your tree at Christmas. No matter how you tweak this tradition, there is, for people of faith, if we choose to see it, there is a line that runs from this tradition of Christmas trees to the very heart and soul and the meaning and message of Christmas. So this Advent season, as we continue to prepare the way of the Lord, looking forward to our Christmas celebration, to celebrating the birth of Jesus, we're looking at 4 different traditions, 4 traditions that most everyone does to celebrate Christmas, and we're tying them back to the heart of the Christmas story. Last week we talked about Christmas cards. Today, of course, it's Christmas trees. Next week's going to be stocking stuffers. And then we're going to end in a couple of weeks with Santa Claus. Today, Christmas trees, and we begin with the announcement of Gabriel to Mary about the birth of Jesus, Luke chapter 1, beginning at verse 26. In the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent from God to a city in Galilee named Nazareth to a virgin betrothed, engaged to a man whose name was Joseph of the house of David. And that's important. And the virgin's name was Mary. And he came to her and said, "Greetings, O favored one, the Lord is with you." And this announcement of the angel Gabriel was made into a world that was hurting. It was made to a particular people, the Israelites, known as the Jewish people in first century Palestine, and they, in particular, were hurting. This is a people that have been told for centuries and centuries that they were God's chosen people. They could go all the way back to Moses, and you know this, Deuteronomy 7, verse 6, the Lord your God has chosen you to be a people for his treasured possession. They are God's chosen people. They had been told that God was going to make them into a great nation, a nation that would be the jealousy of the world. They had been told that God's love and his power would be so clearly on display in them that everybody else would want to be a part of them. That God would make them a powerful and blessed nation through whom the entire world would be blessed. That was the promise. And things, however, had not turned out so well. Yes, the Israelites were still God's chosen people, but they had pushed against God's power, and they had pressed against God's promises like a spoiled child who always finds a way to whine, like an unfaithful spouse who's constantly flirting with something better. That was the Israelites. And finally, it got to a point where God was like, okay, I'm done with you. I still love you. I love you very much. You're still my people, but I'm going to punish you. And he allows them then to be overtaken by other nations, such that when Jesus' birth is announced, the Israelites are no longer sitting pretty in God's city of Jerusalem. They're actually scattered all around the known world, like a bulb that falls from your tree and breaks, and the pieces go everywhere. That's God's people. They're scattered all over the known world. And they're angry. They're angry because the Romans are oppressing them, and that's just not the way it's supposed to be. And they are very, very disappointed with God. He's not keeping up his side of the bargain, or so they think. Which is what makes this announcement of the angel to Mary so important and so life-changing. Gabriel announces to Mary that Jesus is going to be born, and Mary is an Israelite girl, one of the chosen people, and Mary's engaged to a man named Joseph, who is part of the line of King David, former king in Israel, its greatest king. Gabriel comes to Mary and he says, "Do not be afraid. Not be afraid, Mary. You found favor with God. Behold, you will conceive in your womb, and you will bear a son, and you shall call his name Jesus." Now that name, Jesus, matters. Jesus, in the Hebrew language, Joshua, it means Yahweh, the Lord, is salvation, or Yahweh saves. You see, Mary had grown up in a world where she had been told over and over again that God was going to send a Savior to rescue his people, that God was going to draw them back together and make them a great people again. But she had also been living in a world where the goodness and the greatness of God was always in the past and never in the present. Where the answer to everything was, you've got to wait. You've just got to wait. So if you were able to ask Mary before Gabriel's announcement what her attitude was and what the attitude of the people of God in this Jewish community was, well, they would say that God seems to be very far away and he's very disappointing to us. Because the answer was always, God used to do miraculous things in our midst, and one day he will do them again. The answer was never now. It was never today. It was always back then and sometime in the future. But for now, we got to wait. God is silent right now. Feeling that way is not just an Israelite thing. It's a human thing. Maybe some of you are struggling because as you enter this Advent season and head toward Christmas, maybe this is the first Christmas, or it's yet again another Christmas without someone you deeply loved. a spouse, a parent, a child, or maybe you or a loved one have heard a devastating diagnosis, and you've prayed and prayed and prayed for that treatment to work, for the pain to go away, for God to act. That prayer just didn't seem to be answered in the way that you wanted it to be. It seems like the answer is no for now, and you just got to wait. Maybe you're in a marriage that's really frustrating, or a job that's discouraging, or kids who are really draining and depleting, or a body that is aching and just will not heal. And you've been praying and asking for God to do something, and it seems like the answer is just always, not now. Not now. You've heard that He's done great things in the past, but He's just not doing anything, it seems, for you in the present. And you just got to wait for a better future. And you're getting tired of waiting. It's not just the Jews in the first century that were feeling this way. You and I, from time to time, we feel this way too. But again, that's what makes the announcement of the angel to Mary so important. You see, Israel was waiting for a new Joshua. You remember Joshua. Joshua was the one who led God's people, His Old Testament people, into the promised land. And now with God's people having been scattered all over the world and frustrated, they were waiting for the promised new Joshua to arrive, to gather God's people back together and lead them into a new reality where they would once again, as God's chosen people, flourish under His hand. When the angel shows up and says to Mary, Mary, Israelite girl, though you're just 13, 14 years old, you've been chosen by God. You're betrothed to Joseph of the line of David, greatest king of Israel, and you're going to bear a son and call his name Jesus. Joshua in Hebrew, the Lord saves. The angel is saying to Mary, the time is now. The time of now, never being now, is over. Now, today is the day when God is going to show up. Today is the day when God is going to act. The waiting is over. This child that you will bear, Mary, he will gather God's people together, and he will lead them into this bright future that God has planned for you. He will bring hope and blessing and goodness for everybody else in the world as well. And His very presence, His birth, His life, His death, His resurrection, that will be the thing that vanquishes any reason you've ever had to think that God is distant. Disappointing. That's what the angel is saying to Mary. Now, what does all that have to do with Christmas trees? Well, here it is. Have you ever thought just how crazy it is to bring a tree into your house? Just how crazy this practice of Christmas trees really is. Taking a pine tree from outside and bringing it into your living room? Comedian Jim Gaffigan, maybe some of you know Jim Gaffigan, he talks about how bringing a Christmas tree into your house sounds like something that a drunk person would do. A character says, why is this pine tree in your living room? And the drunk says, well, I like it. We're going to decorate it for Jesus, and then I'm going to hang my socks over the fireplace. I mean, it really sounds absurd, doesn't it? This thing that clearly belongs outside has no business being inside, and then we put these lights on it, and we let this thing that belongs outside, but's now come inside, we let it light up our ordinary life as we watch Netflix or eat leftovers or help our kids with their homework. It's a very strange thing, and yet it connects directly to what Christ has done. Jesus Christ has come as God in the flesh from the outside in. From outside of creation into creation. Gabriel says, "Behold, you will conceive in your womb, and you will bear a son, and you shall call his name Jesus. He will be great, and will be called the Son of the Most High." The Most High. The angel tells Mary that in the birth of Jesus, God himself is entering into our world. And we've all heard that many, many times in our lives, and so it's very easy to just miss and brush over and take it for granted. But this is the most remarkable reality that has ever been proclaimed to humanity. God in his fullness has taken on flesh and come into this world, our world. The Creator God who brought everything into existence. The God who enjoys the worship of angels and the splendor of heaven, he has set all of that aside and taken up residence here among us. And not just for a photo op, like a politician who flies into town, shakes a few hands, kisses a few babies, and then he's gone. No. This God was born as a baby, and he lived a life here in this world, the fullness of God in flesh here with us, like a pine tree brought into the living room to a place it just doesn't belong. God has come into creation and shone his light on us. And the question is why? Why would God do that? Why would this holy God enter into this dark, sin-filled world? And the answer to that question is simple, but essential. God came into this world because he loves you. And that's what love does. Love shows up. Love bridges the gap between you and it. Love shows up. Love makes itself known. Some of you may be frustrated because you believe that God he hasn't done anything to make himself known to you. To make it very clear to you that he sees you, that you are not alone, that you matter to him. And Christmas says, no, that's not true. God is not socially distant from you. The very message of Christmas reveals the length to which God will go in his love to make himself known to you. Love shows up. It bridges the gap. In this challenging year of 2020, we have seen how technology can bring people together, right? People from different places, from all over the world, technology can bring them together. I mean, you can open up FaceTime on your phone and talk face-to-face with someone anywhere else on the globe. You can see your grandchildren from hundreds of miles away. You can meet with a group of family or friends or colleagues face-to-face on Zoom. And these technologies, they are wonderful, they're great, and they're very helpful. But even as I'm far away and enjoying this technology, I think, man, you know, there's nothing better than being there. I just wish that I was there with them. That's what love always wants, to be in the room with the ones it loves. Love shows up. How do you know that God loves you and that you matter to him? The fullness of God took on flesh and came here to this earth, to you. But then he went further. Not only did he show up to make his love known to you, but he brings with him blessings that never fade, blessings that never die. We live in a world where, you know, it's sad to say, a world where all good things come to an end. In this broken world, all good things come to an end. We spend a lot of time and we spend a lot of money trying to hide that fact from ourselves. And for many, that's what Christmas is truly all about, denying the difficult realities of life and hiding behind some nostalgia through the celebrations and all the parties, trying to hide the fact that all good things come to an end. And then December the 26th arrives and we pack everything back into the box and we realize, again, all good things come to an end. You wake up with some soreness in the morning, or you come in from doing a little bit of work outside and your knees are aching and your back is hurting, and you ask your wife, well, what do you think it is? And she responds immediately, old age. We live in a world where no matter how fit you are, fitness fades. Cute little toddlers, they become sulky, sullen teenagers, and even the best of marriages will end with a farewell. This side of eternity, all good things come to an end, and as a result, many people in this world walk around waiting for the other shoe to drop. But Jesus comes into that world like a pine tree into the living room, into this place that he doesn't belong, and he brings blessings that never fade, like the rest of the world fades. That's why we bring evergreen trees in, and not oak trees. It's symbolic of the fact that what Jesus Christ brings will never fade, like the summer or in the fall, like the leaves. The gifts that God brings through Jesus last forever. And no matter what you're experiencing in life right now, Jesus has lived and died and rose to secure your forgiveness and your future. There's nothing that you could do that will drain God of all the mercy and the grace he has for you. He will always, always forgive you. He will always forgive whatever you've done in the past and whatever you're going to happen to do tomorrow. And Jesus rose from the dead for you, and he promised that one day he is going to come back, and you too will be raised from death and the grave, and he will usher you into a new creation where the other shoe never, ever drops. That's God's promise to you. Now, or right now, Jesus is seated at the right hand of the Father, and he is still working. He is working through his living word to instruct people and to guide people. He's working through his Spirit to bring people to faith, and he is forming churches, and he is moving churches to move mountains. He's doing incredible things still, now, and nothing's going to stop him. This world can be incredibly discouraging for each and every one of us at some point or another, to some degree or another. But if your discouragement is not colored with any hope at all, it's probably because your hope is in all the wrong things. We don't put our hope in the fitness of our bodies, in the size of our bank accounts, in the success of our careers, the endurance of our relationships, or the good works that can be noticed by an elf on a shelf. No, all of those things will fade. All of them. We put our hope in what Jesus Christ, God in the flesh, has come into this world and promised to us. Forgiveness that will never fade. A life in the end that will never, never end. That's what he gives to you. Now, I'll close with this. What's the greatest source of pain in your life right now? It could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be something in your family, something at work, it could be grief. What is it? What is it that causes you angst and frustration, or just maybe sadness? Now let me ask you this. Why did you put up a Christmas tree this year? Is it just because that's what we always do? Or is it because you believe? You have faith. You believe that no matter what's going on around you, God has entered into your world and he has given to you certain gifts that cannot be taken from you. Certain peace and certain promises. If that's the reason why you put up a tree, then your tree is not merely a decoration in your home. No, it is a declaration of your hope. A declaration that God has come into this world to show you how much he loves you and to bring with him certain gifts that will never fade, never fall away for you. Your tree is a declaration of that hope. A declaration of hope out the front of your window of your home into a dark world. Something has entered into a place that it doesn't belong, and it is evergreen. It does not fade. So my hope for you this Advent and Christmas season is that every time you look at that Christmas tree, whether it's Elvis on the top or some cute little angel, you might be reminded of that truth. You might say not just, hey, the king looks good up there, but that you might be reminded that God has come close to you, that he has given you things, wonderful, wonderful gifts that cannot be taken from you. Amen. Let's stand and celebrate that, shall we?